Picture this. It's 2 a.m. and you're lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying that conversation from 3 days ago for the 100th time. Your mind is spinning through every possible scenario about tomorrow's presentation, analyzing every word choice, every potential outcome, everything that could go wrong. Sound familiar? Here's the brutal truth. While you've been overthinking, someone else with half your intelligence and twice your confidence just made the decision you've been agonizing over for weeks. They took action. They moved forward. They got results. Meanwhile, you're still stuck in your head, trapped in an endless loop of analysis that's slowly suffocating your potential. I'm about to show you something that will change everything. Overthinking isn't a sign of intelligence. It's not careful planning. It's not being thorough. Overthinking is a mental prison that's stealing your time, your energy, and your opportunities. And the solution? It's simpler than you think. In the next 15 minutes, you're going to discover why your brain tricks you into overthinking, the hidden costs that are destroying your life, and most importantly, the simple system that will free you from this mental trap forever. By the end of this video, you'll have the tools to make faster decisions, take confident action, and finally break free from the paralysis of analysis. But here's the catch. You have to actually apply what you learn. No more overthinking whether this advice will work. No more waiting for the perfect moment to start. The time is now. Chapter 1. The Overthinking Epidemic. We're living in the golden age of overthinking. Never before in human history have we had access to so much information, so many options, so many voices telling us what we should do, how we should think, what we should choose, and it's paralyzing us. Your great-grandfather didn't overthink whether to ask someone on a date. He just did it. Your grandmother didn't spend 3 hours researching the perfect restaurant for dinner. She cooked what was available. They didn't have the luxury of infinite choice, and ironically, that made them more decisive, more action-oriented, more successful in many ways. But here's what's really happening in your brain when you overthink. You're activating what neuroscientists call the default mode network. This is the part of your brain that becomes active when you're not focused on the outside world and your mind is wandering. It's the voice in your head that never stops talking, analyzing, worrying, planning. The problem is that this network was designed for a different world. Thousands of years ago, when our ancestors faced a rustling bush, overthinking could save their lives. Is it a predator? Is it the wind? Should I run or investigate? That careful analysis was the difference between survival and death. But in today's world, that same mechanism is working against you. Your brain treats choosing a career path with the same urgency as escaping a saber-toothed tiger. It floods you with cortisol, activates your fight or flight response, and keeps you in a state of chronic stress and indecision. Here's the shocking reality. The average person makes about 35,000 decisions per day, from what to wear, to what to eat, from which route to take to work, to what to watch on Netflix. And if you're overthinking even a fraction of these decisions, you're burning through your mental energy faster than a sports car burns through gasoline. This is called decision fatigue, and it's why successful people like Steve Jobs wore the same outfit every day. why Barack Obama only wore blue or gray suits as president, why Mark Zuckerberg has a closet full of identical gray t-shirts. They understood something that most people don't. Your willpower and decision-making ability are finite resources. Every time you overthink a small decision, you're depleting the mental energy you need for the big ones. You're essentially choosing to be tired, stressed, and indecisive about the things that actually matter because you wasted your cognitive resources worrying about things that don't. But it gets worse. Overthinking doesn't just drain your energy, it actually makes you worse at making decisions. When you overanalyze, you start to doubt information that was perfectly clear before. You begin to see problems that don't exist, create obstacles that aren't there, and convince yourself that simple solutions are somehow inadequate. This is why your first instinct is often your best instinct. Your subconscious mind processes information incredibly quickly, drawing on years of experience and pattern recognition to give you an immediate gut feeling. But then your conscious mind steps in with its need to analyze everything, and suddenly what was clear becomes cloudy. The most successful people in the world aren't the smartest, they're the most decisive. They understand that a good decision made quickly is almost always better than a perfect decision made too late. They know that you can course correct along the way, but you can't make progress while you're standing still. Think about the last major opportunity you missed because you overthought it. Maybe it was a job offer you analyzed to death until the position was filled by someone else. Maybe it was an investment opportunity you researched so thoroughly that by the time you were ready to act, the moment had passed. Maybe it was asking someone out, starting a business, moving to a new city, or taking any kind of meaningful risk. Now, think about how you felt afterward. Regret, right? Not because you made the wrong decision, but because you didn't make any decision at all. You let overthinking steal your opportunity, your confidence, your momentum. This epidemic of overthinking is creating a generation of smart, capable people who are paralyzed by their own intelligence. They know too much, consider too many variables, see too many potential outcomes. They're like chess grandmasters trying to calculate every possible move in a game where the rules keep changing. Chapter 2. The Neuroscience of Mental Paralysis. Let's dive deep into what's actually happening in your brain when you get stuck in overthinking mode. Understanding the neuroscience will help you recognize when it's happening and give you the power to interrupt the pattern. When you start overthinking, your brain activates several key regions simultaneously. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for executive function and planning, goes into overdrive. It's like having a computer with too many programs running at once. Everything slows down, gets glitchy, and eventually freezes. At the same time, your anterior cingulate cortex, which processes emotions and monitors for conflicts, starts firing rapidly. This is the part of your brain that notices when things don't feel right, when there's uncertainty, when you're facing a potential threat to your ego or well-being. It's essentially your internal alarm system, and when you overthink, it gets stuck in the on position. Meanwhile, your amygdala, the brain's fear center, begins releasing stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline. These chemicals were designed to help you respond quickly to immediate physical threats,
But when they're triggered by mental scenarios that may never happen, they create a state of chronic stress and indecision. Here's the shocking reality. The average person makes about 35,000 decisions per day, from what to wear, to what to eat, from which route to take to work, to what to watch on Netflix. And if you're overthinking even a fraction of these decisions, you're burning through your mental energy faster than a sports car burns through gasoline. This is called decision fatigue, and it's why successful people like Steve Jobs wore the same outfit every day, why Barack Obama only wore blue or gray suits as president, why Mark Zuckerberg has a closet full of identical gray t-shirts. They understood something that most people don't. Your willpower and decision-making ability are finite resources. Every time you overthink a small decision, you're depleting the mental energy you need for the big ones. You're essentially choosing to be tired, stressed, and indecisive about the things that actually matter because you wasted your cognitive resources worrying about things that don't. But it gets worse. Overthinking doesn't just drain your energy, it actually makes you worse at making decisions. When you overanalyze, you start to doubt information that was perfectly clear before. You begin to see problems that don't exist, create obstacles that aren't there, and convince yourself that simple solutions are somehow inadequate. This is why your first instinct is often your best instinct. Your subconscious mind processes information incredibly quickly, drawing on years of experience and pattern recognition to give you an immediate gut feeling. But then your conscious mind steps in with its need to analyze everything, and suddenly what was clear becomes cloudy. The most successful people in the world aren't the smartest, they're the most decisive. They understand that a good decision made quickly is almost always better than a perfect decision made too late. They know that you can course correct along the way, but you can't make progress while you're standing still. Think about the last major opportunity you missed because you overthought it. Maybe it was a job offer you analyzed to death until the position was filled by someone else. Maybe it was an investment opportunity you researched so thoroughly that by the time you were ready to act, the moment had passed. Maybe it was asking someone out, starting a business, moving to a new city, or taking any kind of meaningful risk. Now think about how you felt afterward. Regret, right? Not because you made the wrong decision, but because you didn't make any decision at all. You let overthinking steal your opportunity, your confidence, your momentum.
Over time, you develop what psychologists call learned helplessness, the belief that your actions don't matter, that outcomes are beyond your control, that you're powerless to create the life you want. Relationships suffer tremendously from overthinking. When you overanalyze every text message, every facial expression, every social interaction, you create problems that don't exist and miss connections that do. You become so focused on managing impressions and avoiding rejection that you forget to be authentic and present. The energy cost of overthinking is also significant. Your brain uses about 20% of your body's total energy, and when it's stuck in overdrive, that percentage increases dramatically. This is why a day of overthinking can leave you feeling more exhausted than a day of physical labor. You're literally burning yourself out without producing anything of value. Creativity and innovation are casualties of overthinking as well. When your mind is constantly analyzing and critiquing, there's no space for new ideas to emerge. You become so focused on what's practical, safe, and logical that you lose touch with what's possible, exciting, and revolutionary. The health impacts are real too. Chronic overthinking triggers the same stress response as real physical threats, flooding your system with cortisol and adrenaline. Over time, this leads to elevated blood pressure, weakened immune function, disrupted sleep, and increased risk of anxiety and depression. Social costs accumulate as well. Overthinkers often become boring conversationalists because they're so focused on saying the right thing that they say nothing interesting at all. They miss out on spontaneous adventures, last-minute opportunities, and the kind of experiences that create lasting memories and deep connections. Perhaps most tragically, overthinking robs you of the present moment. While your mind is spinning through past regrets and future worries, life is happening right now. You miss sunsets because you're worried about tomorrow's weather. You miss conversations because you're analyzing what you should say next. You miss opportunities for joy because you're focused on potential problems. The compound effect of these costs is staggering. Small decisions that could be made in seconds stretch into hours. Simple opportunities become complex problems. Clear paths become maze-like puzzles. And slowly, over months and years, overthinking transforms capable, intelligent people into hesitant, anxious, paralyzed versions of themselves. Your brain isn't trying to sabotage you when it falls into overthinking patterns. In fact, it's trying to protect you, using mechanisms that were perfectly adapted for a world that no longer exists. Understanding why your brain defaults to overthinking will help you recognize when it's happening and give you the compassion to change the pattern without fighting against your own nature. The primary culprit is what evolutionary psychologists call the better safe than sorry principle. For millions of years, our ancestors survived by being cautious, by thinking through potential threats, by considering what could go wrong before taking action. The humans who rushed into unknown situations without analysis often didn't live long enough to pass on their genes. This cautious mindset served us well when the stakes were literally life and death. If you heard a noise in the bushes, it was better to spend time analyzing whether it was a predator than to ignore it and potentially become someone's dinner. If you were considering eating an unknown plant, extensive deliberation could save you from poisoning. But here's the problem. Your ancient brain doesn't distinguish between choosing a restaurant for dinner and escaping from a saber-toothed tiger. Both situations trigger the same analytical processes, the same caution mechanisms, the same tendency to consider every possible negative outcome. Modern life has created what researchers call a threat detection malfunction. Your brain's early warning system, which was calibrated for physical dangers that appeared suddenly and required immediate response, is now constantly activated by abstract, future-oriented concerns that may never actually materialize. When you're lying in bed worrying about a presentation next week, your brain is responding as if the audience is already there, judging you, waiting to pounce on your mistakes. When you're analyzing whether to ask someone on a date, your brain is treating potential rejection like a physical attack on your survival.
This is compounded by what psychologists call the negativity bias, your brain's tendency to focus more on potential losses than potential gains. Studies show that people feel the pain of losing $100 more intensely than the pleasure of gaining $100. This bias made sense when resources were scarce, and losing anything could mean starvation. But in today's abundant world, it often prevents us from taking beneficial risks. Your brain also has a built-in completion tendency. It wants to resolve open loops and answer unanswered questions. This is why you can't stop thinking about a problem until you've solved it, even when the problem doesn't actually need solving. Your brain perceives unresolved decisions as threats to your sense of control and competence. Social media and information overload have hijacked these natural tendencies. Your brain receives thousands of data points every day about what you should do, what you should want, what you should achieve. This creates what psychologists call choice overload, when having too many options actually makes decision-making harder, not easier. The famous jam study illustrated this perfectly. When shoppers were offered 24 varieties of jam to sample, only 3% made a purchase. But when they were offered just 6 varieties, 30% bought jam. More options led to more analysis, more comparison, more second-guessing, and ultimately more paralysis. Your brain also falls victim to what's called the planning fallacy, the tendency to underestimate how long tasks will take and overestimate your ability to complete them perfectly. This leads to endless planning and replanning as your brain keeps trying to create the perfect strategy that will guarantee success. Social comparison adds another layer of complexity. Thanks to social media, you're constantly exposed to curated highlights of other people's lives, creating pressure to make optimal choices that will lead to Instagram-worthy outcomes. Your brain starts to treat every decision as a performance that will be judged by others. The paradox of choice has reached epidemic proportions. Your ancestors might have had to choose between 3 potential mates in their village. You have access to millions through dating apps. They might have had one career path available. You have thousands of possibilities. They ate what was available. You have infinite restaurant options, dietary philosophies, and nutrition advice to consider. Your brain's pattern matching system, which once helped you recognize dangerous situations based on limited information, now gets overwhelmed by the complexity of modern decisions. It keeps searching for patterns and precedents that don't exist, trying to apply simple heuristics to complex, unprecedented situations. Fear of regret plays a massive role in overthinking. Your brain has learned that making the wrong choice leads to emotional discomfort, so it tries to prevent regret by analyzing every possible outcome. But this creates a paradox. The fear of making the wrong choice often prevents you from making any choice at all, which guarantees the regret you are trying to avoid. The availability heuristic causes your brain to overweight recent or memorable information when making decisions. If you recently heard about someone's business failing, your brain will overestimate the likelihood of your own business failing. If you saw a news story about a plane crash, your brain will overestimate the dangers of flying, even though statistically you're much more likely to be injured driving to the airport. Perfectionism compounds all of these tendencies. Your brain starts to believe that there's one right answer to every question, one optimal choice in every situation.
This creates impossible standards and endless analysis as you search for a perfect solution that probably doesn't exist. The confirmation bias kicks in during extended analysis periods. Your brain starts to seek information that confirms your existing fears or doubts, while ignoring evidence that supports taking action. If you're scared of starting a business, you'll find every article about business failures while somehow missing all the success stories. Understanding these mechanisms isn't about judging your brain or trying to override its natural tendencies. It's about recognizing when these protective systems are working against you in modern contexts and developing strategies to work with your brain's nature while still taking decisive action. The illusion of productive thinking. Here's the most dangerous lie your brain tells you about overthinking: that it's productive, that all that mental spinning, analyzing, and planning is actually accomplishing something valuable, that you're being responsible, thorough, and intelligent by considering everything.